Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So podcast episodes, I'm slowly catching up. I've filmed other videos, I have no idea in what order things are coming out anymore, but I'm trying. Because I really do enjoy talking about my knitting. It's just, I don't know, something about this year has just been off. And I know I'm not the only one who feels like that, who's kind of just been struggling with filming and getting videos out, even though they want to, so something's in the air or something's just with this year. But I've got, once again, projects that I sort of finished a little while ago, but some of them are newer finished objects where I've actually shown it as a whip before, and a lot of these are actually things I finished just before I went to Ireland, which was sort of mid-August. So this isn't really like everything I made in August, this is more like, well, I guess it is, because some of the things I finished at the end of August. So maybe it is everything I did in August. Because it is September now. I have no idea when this is coming out, but it is September right now. It is still boiling hot here in Austria. It's 27 degrees, has been pretty much all week, and it's just... I want autumn. Like... Yes, it's colder at night, but like, I want it to actually be colder. I want to be able to wear my jumpers again. Speaking of wearing jumpers and things, I'm wearing my Colour Block Boxy Tee, I think is the name. I tested this pattern a couple of years ago now, and I know it's a free pattern now. I can't remember if it was originally, but I know it's available for free on Ravelry. It comes in 2 yarn weights, I think. Obviously all within the pattern, it's free. And the yarn that I used is from West Green Loft Yarns in the colour Amy March, so it's a little women's colour, and I love this one so much. And then the contrast colour I used was from Ducky Darlings, just like a 50 gram, I think she called them like stash enhancers or something like that, just so you could, you know, if you wanted to do it, use it for socks or use it for a jumper or something, you could. And it's short sleeved. I probably could have made my sleeves a little bit longer just to feel comfortable, like just a little bit. And it's oversized. My lengthwise, it's suitable more for like... It's not heavily cropped, it's a little bit shorter. And I think lengthwise is more suited to the warmer months. Whereas the yarn isn't really. It's 75-25 superwash merino and nylon. That is my kind of favourite base to buy with hand-dyed yarn because I can use it for so many things, but it does mean for like a summer top, and it is a fingering weight yarn, it's still very warm. So it is not really intended for summer, it's much more a transitional kind of piece, because in winter, well, I'm gonna be way too cold in this, but... yeah, transitional piece, and, you know, I've accepted, I'm like, it's September, so it's autumn. That's just the way it is. That's literally what I did. 1st of September, I was like, it's time for soups, it's time for cozy blankets, it's time for jumpers, and it was still like 27, 28 degrees every day. But I'm in denial, and I'm gonna stay in denial until it finally gets cold. Yes, so that's what I'm wearing. Hopefully I won't get too hot. If I take it slow and stay calm, should be okay. But I get very excited when I talk about knitting. So, finished objects. I have quite a few. I don't have all of them with me because some of them I took to Ireland with me and either sent away or gave away, but I'll talk about them when we get there. Let's start with 2 amigurumi projects, which one of them I've had on my hook for a really long time and I just didn't work on it, and then I managed to finish it in like an evening, maybe 2. So this is Georgina the Hippo. It's a pattern by TOFT, and I bought the kit, so I got the yarn and stuffing and the black yarn for the eyes as well. And I bought this kit specifically to make this for a friend of mine. The same friend who's getting the elf slippers that I've shared before on here. What else have I already shown off? I can't remember now. Was there anything else? Oh, the felted slippers I shared as well. The purple ones, they're for her, and this is the same person. And I bought the kit specifically for her because I don't think I even told the story in my Gemma video, but I'm going to tell it now. She came to visit me once in Austria. Maybe this was when I was still living in New Zealand, so we flew to Austria together. And we went to the zoo in Vienna, and they had hippos, and she thought it was really adorable when they like come up and their ears go like blah, blah, blah. And then when I saw that TOFT had a little hippo kit, I was like, it'd be cute. She'll enjoy it. And yeah, it's crochet. It's a DK weight yarn. You use a 3mm hook. I don't really check my gauge with these, though it is funny. This isn't just how I've sewn it on. You might be able to see that this arm is a lot like longer and bigger. That's because that's the first thing I made almost like a year ago now when I first got the kit. And everything else I then only made like a few weeks ago, back in August. And yeah, apparently my tension is a lot tighter now with crochet, which makes sense because I've been crocheting a lot more. And so it's a bit easier to... It's not even tensioning my yarn that's the problem. I guess it sort of is. It's more of tensioning the yarn on the hook itself when I have to like grab it. Not actually the stitch that's on the hook, but like when I go to grab more yarn. Something with that I sort of struggle. But like with all TOFT patterns really, you do it all in pieces and then you have to sew it together, which isn't my favourite thing because like I think... You know, Georgina's kind of cute, especially when she sits. Adorable. But what I don't like is that no matter how nice I try to do the sewing on, you always, you know, get a seam because, well, you have to sew it on. Though I am quite proud of her little tail. And the ears and the head are a bit easier to sew on nicely, but it's always the arms that I struggle with. But I think especially, you know, if she's like sitting somewhere on a desk or on a bookshelf or something, you're going to see the front of her anyway, so that'll be fine. And I still have quite a bit of yarn left over, and which means I could either make another one, I think, for myself. I think I have enough yarn, or I also have one of the... Is it called like a menagerie book or something that TOFT have released? So I can also, you know, use the yarn for that. Yeah. So that's Georgina. That's finished object number 1. And then for the same friend, I also made her another amigurumi project because we talked... This was during the pandemic. Did I mention that my friend lives in New Zealand? I don't think I did. Anyway, during the pandemic when we, you know, would chat online, I had ordered a book of different like magical creatures that you can crochet. And I sent her a picture and said, do you want any of them? And she picked a Loch Ness monster called Nessie. Nessie or Nesty? Nestor. No, I think his name's Nestor because I think it's like a male Loch Ness monster. Whatever. This is Nestor. Nestor is huge. He wasn't meant to come out this big, but apparently, I don't know, something happened between crocheting Georgina and crocheting Nestor that suddenly my tension got looser. I have no idea. I used... So the TOFT ones are always made with wool. So this is 100% wool. This I did with the Ricorumi cotton. So it's a DK weight cotton officially, and I used a 2.5mm hook, and he's beefy. And I got through most of him quite quickly, and I think I was on either the head or the body, and I'd already done like most bits, and I ran out of the blue cotton because I ended up using way more than I thought I would. So I had to order some more of that. And for the most part, I kind of just used, like, the green was a scrap, the blue was a scrap. I had most of the blue, light blue already in my stash. And yeah, safety eyes, because I didn't want to have to, like, sew them on. With bigger ones like this, I like using safety eyes, but I thought Georgina would look weird with safety eyes. Plus TOFT recommends, like, using their black yarn. But yeah, also done in pieces. So all the flippers are extra. The body is done in one with the tail. And then the like snout is extra to the head. And then all the other pieces are extra as well. And you have to sew them on. But there's something with these kind of crochet items where I quite like sewing on all the bits because it's kind of clear to see where they have to go. Whereas with, it's just the arms. The legs are fine. It's the arms I struggle with these ones. But yeah, so I made that one too. And in October, I'm going to be in the UK for a shortish while because I'm going to, I don't think I've said this yet, I'm going to see the Critical Role live show. So if you don't know what Critical Role is, it's literally just voice actors playing Dungeons and Dragons. If it's not your thing, totally fine. I love Critical Role, have for years, and actually getting to see them live is absolutely amazing. And going to see it with a knitting friend as well, which just makes it even cooler. And because it's in London, I've got a friend who's like a sort of mutual friend of the friend in New Zealand, and she's going to be flying there because another friend of ours is getting married. I unfortunately can't make it because it's really expensive to fly down there. And, you know, a trip to the UK is something that's a bit more reasonably priced, so I can see friends there, but going all the way to New Zealand and staying there, it's not in my budget. But like I said, this friend lives in London and I'm going to be staying with her for a couple of days, and I already asked her, like, if I give you a couple of bits, would you be okay to take them with you to New Zealand? So, you know, don't have to pay ridiculous shipping, but there's also less of a risk of them kind of getting lost and going missing. And she said she's more than happy to, and that's why I've been focusing on getting some of these projects done. And one of my whips, yeah, I think it's just one of my whips is also something for the same friend. So, and I haven't seen her since 2019, I think, the friend in New Zealand. So that's why she's getting lots of presents. So there's those two. Now, I guess I'll talk about two projects I don't have with me because I finished them and took them to Ireland and sent them off from Ireland. And that, let's start with the Alaska sweater. It's done. I don't think that's a surprise considering how close I was to already finishing it in the previous video. I think it was even the one before that, because I still had other stuff I needed to show in the last video. And yeah, it didn't take long to finish. I loved knitting that sweater. I loved the yarn. It's beautiful. So yarn wise, I used the Merino Tweed from Skein in the Stitch because it was a sample for her. And I still have, you know, decent-ish amounts left of the main colour. I have nothing left of the contrast colour. So I already explained how I kind of, when I finished the body, wound up what I had left of the contrast colour and split it in half. So I had enough for each sleeve. And it worked out pretty much perfectly. I had like couple of meters left at the end, not enough to do anything with. It went into the hedgehog fibers collection of scraps that I have. So I do still have some yarn left over. What I'll do with it, I'm not sure yet. It might just go into my Battenberg blanket or some kind of a scrappy project because I don't think it's going to be enough to do anything really with it. But it was so much fun to knit. I absolutely loved it. And then with blocking as well, it's so beautiful. And Jess already now has the item. It arrived really quickly. So I sent it when I was in Ireland, and I think it was like a Friday or something I sent it. And both her and the other one I'm about to talk about as well, they arrived the next day. It was insane. But so she's already worn it and tried it on and has taken pictures, and it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So I really need to make one myself because it was a lot of fun to knit, and it is just a really stunning pattern. So I just have to find the right yarn for it. I did try to look in Ireland. Speaking of Ireland, I will be making a separate video talking about like the things that I bought there, some of the things I got up to, and because we did visit a lot of a couple of wool mills and things, so I thought it'd be nice to kind of share that as well. And yarn was purchased because of course it was. Yeah, so I finished the Alaska sweater pretty soon after that video. I think it was even that evening because I just had like a little bit of sleeve left. And the other project that I also sent off when I was in Ireland was the Dancing Nancies. So that was the sweater that I did as a sample for Laura of the Lonely Knitter using her yarn. I've shared this 2 or 3 times now, I think, in podcasts. And it did just kind of go really quickly all of a sudden. I think I was in such a colour work mood, but then also having the gap between like the top colour work and the bottom of the body colour work meant, you know, a little bit of stockinette in the round, not having to worry about anything, and then I got to do some more colour work. It was nice. I did make the body a couple of inches longer because Laura asked for that. The sleeves, though, I think I worked exactly to the pattern. And I think I did say, like, oh, it's going to be so nice because, you know, the sleeves are going to go so quickly because you've got decreases. You don't have decreases with those sleeves, you have increases. So the first sleeve I did in a couple of days, and then I immediately started the second one, and that one took me about a week of just occasionally working on it because I just wasn't in the mood for the increases in the stockinette at the beginning, because it just ended up being more and more stitches and it was just taking so long. And so the second sleeve was a struggle with that jumper. But overall, it was a really nice knitting experience. I do have to say, I think I've said this before, colour work with superwash yarn is not easy. It's not impossible, but it can be really hard, especially if you have a single stitch in one colour and a huge block of a different colour. It can be really hard to get the tension right. And I sometimes have to go back and kind of like pull on certain stitches and kind of like make the float shorter, and then, you know, until I'm back at my working strand, just to make sure that the tension is okay. And if you ever like get caught on one of the floats as you're knitting, it is insane how much the yarn just pulls out because there's no grip to it because it's superwash. It's really smooth. And with the Alaska sweater, because this is a DK weight yarn, it's much easier to do colour work with it. So the Alaska sweater wasn't a problem. I also used ladder back stitches, which was really easy, which made it really easy. But with the Dancing Nancies, you didn't really need it. There weren't always long floats. So you'd have to, you know, increase for the ladder back stitch, then decrease it, and just repeat that process all the time, and it's just not worth it in my opinion. But yeah, so it was tricky at times with the colour work, but eventually I did find my flow and just had to, you know, sometimes go back, like I said, and fix my tension a little bit. But overall, really happy with it. Laura also has received it and said she was really happy with it too, and she loved the fit of it. And she also said, you know, she's never really taken the time to make a fingering weight sweater for her that actually fits her. And so the fact that I did that, and then with all the colour work, she was really grateful. And that's just really, that's just what I enjoy about it. Knitting for others, especially yarn dyers, who, you know, are knitters themselves often. Sometimes they're not, but typically they are. And they know the amount of work that goes into it. And just hearing those stories of, you know, people who struggled finding nice things to wear in, you know, normal shops. And then with knitting, they're able to finally get something that fits well. But then it's a lot of work, and, you know, they've got their own kind of business to run, and they've got kids and just a family in general. And then the fact that someone then trusts me enough to give me yarn, which I think is a huge investment, even if you've dyed it yourself and the cost is a little bit lower. You know, trusting someone with like 4, 5, 6 skeins of hand-dyed yarn, and then, you know, me sending that back to them and just trusting me with the knitting process and everything. It's just, I really, really love knitting for other people and try to do it as much as possible, just because, you know, there's only so much I can wear and have in my own wardrobe. So really enjoyed it. It's not a pattern I plan on making again. So the Alaska sweater is like, definitely I can't wait to pick the right yarn and get cast that on. Dancing Nancies just isn't my sort of style and my sort of thing. But I'm glad I've made it, and the yarn, like the colours that Laura picked, were really beautiful for that pattern, and I'm really proud of the finished piece, but won't be doing that pattern again. It was a lot of work, but what I think if I'd made it for myself, it would have taken me years to finish. But because it was for Laura, and, you know, we're friends and we play D&D together and things like that, that was kind of a motivating thing to be like, if you put this aside and don't work on it, she's not going to get it, and she's not going to get that enjoyment. And so then I'm like, oh yeah, find my enjoyment knitting it again. And I just spend time thinking about the friend that I'm crafting for, and it's lovely. So those are the two I don't have, but they've arrived safely, which makes me so happy. And yeah, I've only got one other sample knit that I need to work on. I've swatched for it, but I haven't started it properly yet, but I will soon, because I need to. Other finished objects. Let's go with these two. So, something I finished just before I went to Ireland, because I was really hoping to bring it with me, is the top that I struggled to pronounce. I think I said it wrong last time, but I believe it is pronounced Luasc by Albina McLaughlin. Let's just hope it's finally right. So, as you can see, I've shown this before, but it's a V-neck raglan t-shirt, I should say, and patterned by Albina McLaughlin. I've been working on this for, I think, since the beginning of summer, roughly. The yarn is Antigone by Rerum Natura. It's 100% linen, about a sport weight, and it's the colour's a bit more green than it currently looks on camera. It's a sort of sagey green, I guess, and officially the pattern said I'd need 5 skeins. I only had 4, and I was like, I'm just gonna make it work somehow, and I did, and I actually managed to get out a decent length for the body, and I even chose to do a more A-line shape, so you might be able to see that it gets bigger towards the bottom. That was because I wanted to have not too much ease up at the top, but I wanted it relatively loose and flowy at the bottom, and that's what the A-line did. So it was only every couple of inches that I just increased, I think, 4 stitches in the round, and it fits beautifully. I wore it in Ireland for my kind of like birthday dinner, which had to be a day after my birthday because the restaurant wasn't open on my birthday. But it was a restaurant called Cowl in Galway, and it was like a Irish New Zealand sort of like fusion sort of restaurant, and it was incredible. And yeah, I got to wear this, which made me so happy. But yeah, so that was part of why, like, the whole Ireland trip happened. It was for my birthday, and I went with my parents, and it was absolutely incredible. But I'll talk about it in another video. But yeah, so knitting wise, I've said this before, considering it's 100% linen, I was surprised at how easy it was on my hands. So there were times with the body, as you know, stitch number was increasing and trying to get the length out that I need for my taller body. It was a lot of knitting, but I only remember maybe one evening thinking like, oh, I gotta put this down now, it's hurting. And that was, I think, less to do with the yarn and more just I'd been knitting too much that day. And I really want to make another one. If it's going to be in plant fibre, I don't know, might be wool, but it's sort of like a cumulus tee, but a slightly bigger gauge. And in my opinion, I haven't made one, but I own the pattern of the cumulus tee. I think the construction's better, but that's because I love Albina McLaughlin's patterns. I think she's a genius with how she kind of, the different options she gives you, how she does her construction, so it fits really well, and it's just, adore her patterns. So I chose to do the I-cord, but there's also, I think, like a ruffle or a flutter option now. Not my thing. I cord. And I did say last time that I was worried it wouldn't look good, but with blocking it's sitting perfectly. And for the sleeves, I did the... Is it the flare? There's a couple of options for the sleeves and I can't remember. I increased, and it's plant fiber so you can see the increases. It doesn't bother me, it's just the way it is. So I increased pretty much right at the beginning, then knitted for a certain length before doing the folded hem. And for that, to save yarn, but also in the pattern it says to use like a lace weight yarn ideally for the inside of the folded hem so it doesn't like pucker. I didn't have that, but I did have tin linen, which is like a fingering weight linen viscose cotton blend, and that worked out perfectly. And that was a scrap from my farfa top, so it was nice to use it for something. And I think it's cute. I think I said this already, like I like when that bit of white pops out. And I did the same thing at the bottom here. So I kind of knitted the body until a point where, because you do the folded hem, all I needed was enough yarn to do one purl round before you start with this other colour or other yarn. And so it was amazing for using up all the yarn that you have, because I kind of just measured how wide the garment is and then went like, okay, full circumference is this, times it by 4, that is approximately how much yarn I'm going to need for the purl round. And then, you know, leave a little bit extra for wiggle room. And then also, you know, sometimes it would be that I'd be close to where I'd put that knot in, but, you know, I'm close to finishing a round. I'm like, well, I'm going to finish the round, or the knot is still a while away, but I'm only just starting a new round. Not going to risk it. And I really like kind of calculating that a little bit to try and use as much of the yarn as possible. And I have nothing left. I think it was literally the tiniest end that I had woven in, and then it was just little ends that I snipped off, and that also went to hedgehog fibers. So I'm in love with it. I've worn it a few times now in Austria as well, because it was way hotter here than it was in Ireland. And with 27 degrees, it was still comfortable. Inside, outside, love it. So definitely something that I want to make again. And like I've said before, I love the linen yarn. It's just pricey. So for my size, I did have gauge issues, I should say that. My gauge is a little bit looser than what the pattern says, but I didn't want to go down another needle size because I did this on 3mm needles, and I thought going down another needle size would be too tight, and I liked the fabric I was getting, so I did a size smaller than I was meant to. I think I was meant to do like a 5 and I did a 4. Or was I meant to do a 6 and I did a 5? It should be on Ravelry if you're interested, so you can kind of, you know, gauge as well. If you want to use the same yarn, you can get an idea of the size that I made, and then I managed to get away with 4 skeins and a longer body than was written in the pattern. So love it. That's the only reason I think I don't want it to get warmer, is so I can wear this. So I think even if it's cold for my next podcast video, I'm still going to wear it. And so it is blocked and everything because, well, I've worn it a few times now and I love it. The other thing I finished for Ireland was my French market bag by Petite Knit. So it is done, it is blocked, it has a lining, it has straps and everything. The yarn I used, I've said before, is from Søstrene, and originally the yarn is from Isaiah, I believe, and you have to hold like 3 strands together. The one from Søstrene is thicker, so I only held 2 strands. Didn't bother checking my gauge. I think I used the recommended needle size because I'm a bit of a loose knitter, so I was like, oh, even if the yarn's a bit thicker, that should be fine. And I also made my bag bigger, so I increased to more stitches because I just wanted a bit of a heftier bag. And then lengthwise, it's also a little bit longer than what's recommended. I had a bit of issues with sewing the lining because trying to Obviously I couldn't use the measurements from the pattern for sewing the lining, so I had to like calculate it myself, but it was tricky. And I can do mathematics. I have a degree in mathematics, along with chemistry, but it was hard. And it didn't really work out. The lining is a little bit too big, but it's workable, it's fine. And the straps are the actual petite knit straps, and my mum had ordered these to make her own, but she then had a second pair of the straps, and she said I could have them for my bag, and she gave them to me in Ireland, and it was literally like 10-15 minutes before we left for the restaurant for my birthday. It was quicker like sewing on the straps because I still hadn't done it. I had quite a few days to do it, and I just didn't. But yeah, so that is done. It has been used. It was practical. I also put on snap buttons just to keep it closed, because I'm like, we live in a sad world where people pickpocket, and it doesn't make a huge difference, but it does kind of prevent it from just like opening up a bit, and it just makes me feel a little bit more safe and secure. Really like the pattern. Obviously my final product is size-wise different, and the look, but this paper yarn is great from Søstrene. I can really recommend it, and I think it's a good pattern. It's not one I'm going to make again because I don't need more than one of this type of bag, but I'm glad I have it. Socks. 3 pairs of socks. One of them I don't have with me, which I'll probably talk about first. Something started to happen in August. I haven't really made that many socks this year. I've always enjoyed sock knitting. I do tend to kind of go through phases, especially when it's warmer. I don't want to make socks. But for some reason in August, I was really feeling it. So the first pair, it's actually the last pair I finished, but I started a pair of Scrappy socks before I left for Ireland, and originally the plan was, when I started these, I was like, oh, I'd really like to give my mum some socks when we're in Ireland, because it's going to be much colder than it is, especially in Dubai where my parents are. And my mum tends to get very cold, and I was like, I'll make her a pair of cozy socks to keep her warm. And then as it started to get closer to me leaving, I then kind of thought, Mum and I were constantly talking about like luggage space and, you know, having to be careful of how much yarn we buy, and everything we pack will limit how much we can get in Ireland. And then I was like, oh, maybe Mum won't want the socks because that will take up space in a suitcase. And I was close to finishing the socks, I think. So I chose to do an afterthought heel. So I literally just did a toe up. And I do have a picture of the finished socks in Ireland. My mum took the picture, and I think they're beautiful. I didn't use a pattern. I just made it up. So I did a toe-up sock, increased until I thought the socks were roomy for me, because my mum has slightly bigger feet than I do. And so if they're roomy for me, they'll definitely fit Mum. And then I got to the point where I should have put the heel in for my size, and I was like, well, if they are going to be for Mum, it's stupid for me to put the heel in now. And then I was like, afterthought heel, easy peasy, I'll just cut into the sock. So I did the whole tube, then did the cuff, and the second sock is then a different set of colours. And I then kind of showed them to Mum and said, you know, they would be for you if you want them. And it ended up being that Mum had actually made me a pair of socks. So it was actually quite nice to be able to then give them to her. And I just got her to try them on, and then sort of figured out, okay, this is the best position for the heel. Snipped into the middle stitch of like one half of the sock. First I picked up the stitches and then unraveled it so I had the correct number of stitches, and worked like 3-4 rounds before starting the decreases. I find those kind of like afterthought heels and short row heels typically don't fit my foot, and I think my mum's foot either. Most people I know, it definitely doesn't fit. It often doesn't fit well. But I did discover recently that just by doing a few extra rounds before you start the decreases, doesn't really work with a short row heel, but with an afterthought heel, it kind of helps to get a bit more room, and then it fits better. The yarn I used for that was just a load of scraps. So a lot of it I don't have anymore because I finished it off, but I used I do actually still have a lot of them. So I used a grey for the toe and for the heel and for the cuff, I believe. And that I don't have any left because I've already used it in another project. And that was the Croft DK by West Yorkshire Spinners, I believe. And I used a mohair with it, so I always use DK yarn with a mohair. And the mohair was from Beehive Yarns in Gunsmoke, I believe the colour was. And then I made one sock in a red colour with white stripes. This is a Erica Knight British wool yarn that I bought to test if I could make the Love Witch, Love Magic. I can't remember what it's called now. The green dress that I tested. And I bought a variety of different skeins to swatch and try them out. And this was one of them and it didn't work out. But I used quite a bit of it for the socks. And this was a leftover bit of Cumulus by Fiber Spates, which I used for my novice cardigan that I made earlier this year. So I used those two. And the white for the stripes was a leftover bit of hand-dyed yarn from Waku Yarns in the colour Nanyo, which means friend, I believe. And some kid silk, soft silk mohair from Knitting for Olive. I think this is the colour Cloud. Could be putty. Should be written down below which one it is because they look relatively similar. And I never remember which one I used here. But that was for the stripes for both of them. And then for the other sock, which was blue, this is a leftover, once again, West Yorkshire Spinners Croft DK. I've had this yarn for a really long time. I made a pair of fingerless mittens for a friend of mine. And this is a skein of Tin Silk Mohair by Sanderson that I just had. And I was like, oh, the blues work well enough. And yeah, made those socks. So managed to get, you know, a pair of fluffy, cozy socks out of just some random scrap yarn. And I did kind of think at first, should I just make it one colour? Should I do multiple different coloured stripes? And then I thought it'd be really fun with the white stripe being consistent, and then just red and blue I thought was nice. So no pattern for that one, but I'll talk about where the sort of inspiration came from for those socks. Because I own a pattern from Albina McLaughlin again that I bought because you can use Nutiden for it. The pattern is called the Thrifty Marla socks, I believe. And a lot of Albina McLaughlin's patterns, she does kind of give instructions for how you can just knit it using regular kind of yarn. And then she often includes extra info in a PDF about what to do if you're using Nutiden. And so I bought this sock pattern to make socks with Nutiden yarn. But then I also kind of looked at it and I was looking through my yarn stash and I just had some commercial sock yarn that I tried to make socks with before and it just didn't work out. They just didn't look good. I got through most of the, like a leg of the sock, and it was just the colour change wasn't quick enough and it was too kind of stark and the yarn didn't feel nice. And so I had like this skein, which was getting really messy because I, I'd frogged the sock and then just wrapped it around the skein. And I was like, I either need to get rid of this or I need to find some way of using it. And my first thought was, okay, it can go into a blanket. But then I was like, I have the entire skein left. It's a lot. And what I then ended up doing was looked at those socks, that pattern, and was like, well, let's just try it. And try it I did. So I have finished the pair. And it's this pattern that then inspired me to make those stripy ones for my mum, because I used the same sort of technique, just different needle size and a different stitch count. So I used bigger needles for the DK Plus mohair, and these ones are 2 strands of fingering weight yarn. So the yarn I used is a Grundel sock yarn. That's always so hard to say because my brain immediately wants to say it in German because Grundel is like a German word, well, name. But I held two of them together, and so you can kind of see that it starts with like this sort of orangey purple, goes to blue, back to purple, and then the other one was one which was more like black, goes to charcoal, goes to dark grey, light grey, and that's the other colour that you see running through. And through that combination, I really love the socks. I think it's really cool because they kind of played together really well. Also an afterthought heel, so the colours are very different in the heel, but I love it. And it's then 2x2 rib for the leg, and then you do a bit of 1x1 rib at the top. And you can see the other one is very different colour-wise, but I think they're beautiful. I did make these a little bit too long because I think it was a mixture of being really excited and enthusiastic about these socks, and the fact that when I do toe up, I still struggle to kind of figure out how much the heel adds. So I end up always making the foot too long. But it does mean, you know, if they start to kind of like felt, it's not a problem. And these have been washed and blocked, but the socks keep like squishing down here and getting longer, and I actually need a little bit more width. And they just keep kind of stretching lengthwise and not widthwise. So I think I haven't worn them yet. It's been too warm. I think after wearing them for a while, it might be that they start to fit better because it will stretch them out a bit. I loved making these. I am now kind of in a space where I just want to look through all my sock yarn, and anything where I'm like, I'm not really liking this, it's not, you know, making me happy anymore, it's not heart jumping, then I'm like, I could put it aside and make another pair of these socks, because they also go quicker because it's thicker yarn. So I believe I used 3mm needles for this pair, and the one for my mum was 3.5mm, and it's sturdy. It wasn't painful to knit, but it is I think a relatively tight gauge. And yeah, I can't wait to wear them. And I can't wait to make more. So I really do want to make another pair with Nutiden, but I also want to make another pair with more of like commercial sock yarn, and even hand-dyed sock yarn where I'm like, I'm just not feeling it on its own. And it's just satisfying to get a pair of socks that's super cozy because it's thicker yarn and it goes so much quicker. So I'm kind of almost a convert. Like I always was for fingering weight socks, and I still like them, but I have to be honest, like I wear my DK and thicker socks a lot more because they act almost like slippers. And I don't know, I also think with a lot of my fingering weight ones, I know how many hours of work went into it, and then I'm like, can't really walk in these because I might get holes in them. But with the thicker ones, not as much work was involved, and especially like, I didn't see myself ever using this yarn. I was like, I'm either just going to donate it or, you know, put it in the hedgehog fibers like thing to turn it into the Tweedy yarn. But now I've got a really nice pair of socks, and I love them. I love them. And I think this is the last finished object I have. I do believe. And this is another pair of socks, and it's another pattern by Albina McLaughlin. We've got 3 today. I love her patterns. This pair of socks, they're called the Wave Run socks, and you can probably see why. I think this is the side with the jog. It is. I'll show you the nicer side. But I think both sides are really nice. So the pattern, like I said, is from Albina McLaughlin again. And I've had the pattern and the yarn because I bought a kit either 2020 or 2021. I was still in the UK. I ordered it from Folk Yarns, I think they're called. Folklore Yarns, something like that. I'll write it below. And it's a Donegal yarn. So it's spun by Donegal Yarns up in Donegal. We were there. I'll talk about it in the Ireland video, but I was at Donegal Yarns and Donegal Studios, and it was amazing. And it's spun by Donegal Yarns, and then it was hand dyed by, I think it's Folklore Yarns. And you got the main colour, and I think it was 100 grams of the main colour and like 20 or 30 grams of the contrast. And I still have quite a bit left of both of them. This is the contrast colour that I used. Scrap of yarn. And this is the main colour, which is just a beautiful blue. So it is a DK weight, and it's non-superwash yarn with no nylon. So it is a tighter gauge for the kind of yarn it is. And with these ones, I had a little bit of pain in my hands because you did work them at such a gauge that it was like a bit too tight for the yarn. But that means that your socks are just going to last longer because there's no nylon in it. So this whole pattern here is literally just increases and decreases. It was a lot of fun to knit, especially, getting to alternate different colours is always nice. And the whole pair went really quickly because, once again, thicker yarn, and you had something fun to look forward to here. And then it was just, in the round, and then you do the toe. You probably already guessed, but the cuff down instead of toe up. And yeah, highly recommend the pattern. It's not, like with the other ones, it's not necessarily something, if you know how to make socks, you really have to buy. I think it's just, these ones just really spoke to me with the colour and the pattern, and I'm really glad I bought them. And I might make more in the future with some other yarn that I have in stash. And with the Thrifty Marla socks, I'm glad I bought that pattern mainly for the neutered in information. But, Albina's patterns are beautifully written. And I think she has a toe up and a cuff down version. I did the toe up. And she gives you ideas about what two yarns to combine and what effect you get. Because it is intended for two skeins of fingering weight yarn. So you do, that's hence Thrifty Marla, like marled socks. So not exactly patterns that I think you have to buy, but they're patterns that if you like the look of it, I can highly recommend, just because of the knitting experience was nice even at the tighter, denser gauge. And I just love Albina McLaughlin's patterns. How many more times can I say it? So yeah, these are finished too. So I started the Wave Run socks because I wanted to wear them when I was in Donegal, and I did. And it was amazing. It was cold enough to wear socks, and yeah, it was just, there's just something so special about, yarn that was spun in the area, especially because we were in Kilcar, which is, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is where Donegal Studio and Donegal Yarns are based. So they were like 5-10 minutes walk down the road. There were sheep everywhere, and it was green, and it was rainy, and it was sunny, and it wasn't too warm, and I'll save it for the video. But loved Ireland, really, really did. And then quite a few whips. Most, at least half, if not more, are new. I am working on a couple of older projects because, well, one of them is for the same friend in New Zealand, and, well, the other one I've shown many times, and I'm desperately trying to finish it off. Let's start with that one, because there's not too much to say. So, Brioche Mystery Shawl by Susanne Sommer, the mystery shawl from 2021. Yes, because she didn't do one last year, and I'm not doing the one from this year. So last time I'd started the section with like the pluses or crosses or whatever you want to call them, and that section is done! Yay! So it wasn't, a lot of rows that I had to do for this section, but I'm at the point where I've got so many stitches on the needles. So now that this section is done, I need to do the stripe bobble section again. And then I think it's the chevron border, and then it's the I-cord binder, which is an entire section on its own because it's a lot of stitches round and around. But we're making progress. slowly but surely. And I'm still hoping to be able to get this done before the end of the year, because it would just be nice to get it off my needles and be able to actually, wear it. So I've been working on this for a long time, but always like I'd pick it up for a few days or weeks every month or so, and once I get into it, it takes me a couple of rows to get into it, but once I'm in it, I really love it and enjoy it. It's just that first stage of picking it up and checking the pattern, and that's always the tricky part for me. But I have made some progress since last time, and next time I show it off, I'll probably have done the bobble section. I'm not setting too big of any like sort of goals right now. I'm like, if I can complete a section in a month or two, that is good enough. Small baby steps will get me to the finish line. So 3 more sections and then I'm done with that one. And the other old project that I've made a lot of progress on, because it was one of the few projects I took with me to Ireland. So I took the stripy socks with me. I took the A Bit Chilly in Copenhagen, like shawlette with me. I barely worked on that one though, but I did take pictures in Cove in County Cork, which inspired the yarn. And then this project, did I take any others? I don't think so. I tried to really limit myself. And so this is the Fjer Cardigan by Fibre Tales, which I'm making for my friend in New Zealand. And last time I showed it, I was here on the back piece. So that's how much I had last time, if you can sort of see that. Not a lot. The back piece is now finished. La-di-da. Well, you can see the colour a lot better now. So the back piece is done, and I have finished one front panel. Now it's rolling in, it's worked flat and in pieces. I've said this many times. And it's not blocked yet, so it's all like rolling in, but it will be fine at the end. So I need to do one more front piece, 2 more sleeves, and then the button band. And then I can seam it all together, and then it's finally done. And like I said, middle of October, I'm going to be in the UK, and that's when I'd like to get this done. And because this is a size medium, because my friend's smaller than me, but she's just a little bit shorter, so lengthwise, it does need to be a little bit longer than what it says in the pattern, but it's way less stitches than if I was making my size. So it's all going relatively quickly, and exactly what I hoped would happen did happen, because I didn't really have that many other projects with me, and this was definitely the easiest one to work on. I kind of reached a point where I was like, well, if you want to knit, you have to work on this. And then I got really into the rhythm of working flat and loved, the flow of knitting a row, purling a row. And then you also have, this is always so hard to see, you have this like detail on the side, which when you sew it together, it looks like a fern. So that's the really nice detail of it. And yeah, so my goal was to finish the entire back piece before I get back to Austria from my trip in Ireland. And I managed to do that. It was actually at the airport that I finished the back piece. And because my flight was ridiculously delayed, and I was at the airport much earlier because my parents' flight was earlier in the day, I think I got like most of the way through like the first part of the front piece, because you then start to do decreases for the v-neck, and I hadn't started that, but I got most of like this section done still at the airport. My flight was meant to be at 9 p.m. I think, and then we didn't leave. No, 7 p.m. was when my flight was meant to be, and we didn't leave until 10:30 or something. And so I didn't arrive in Austria until like 1 or 2 in the morning, and then waiting for luggage and getting a taxi home because trains don't run at that time anymore. I think I got back and went and got to bed at like 3 in the morning. Wasn't a nice ending to the trip. And that was all to do with the air traffic control problem that was in the UK, where the system kind of shut down and they had to limit how many planes were going through the airspace. And coming from Ireland, going to Austria, we kind of had to go through UK airspace. And yeah, so not fun. But it did mean I got a lot of knitting done. And I also wanted to show that so the yarn that I'm using, I haven't even said, is Bijou Bouche Le Petit Lambswool in like the dark grey burgundy or something like that. And they come in 50 gram skeins, and it is more of like a light fingering weight yarn. That's why it's like relatively see-through, but when it blocks, this yarn really blooms. But with 50 grams, I got this far on the body. I couldn't believe it. I know it's worked flat, but still, that's a lot. And then with the second one, finished that, did the front piece, and still had some left. I think I might have yarn left over at the end of this project, but we'll see. So, making good progress. I did the front panel really quickly because of the V-neck decreases, which speed things up. And I'm hoping, because the sleeves are actually worked in the round, that they're going to go a lot quicker, just because I don't have to work flat. And as much as I've enjoyed working flat, I am quicker when I work just in the round. But yeah, making progress, slowly but surely. And if it doesn't get done for when I'm in the UK, it's fine. It's just I've had this on my needles, I think, since 2021. And it would just be nice to, get it done. And I've said before, it's been hard to find motivation to work on it because with the pandemic and now financial situations and things in the whole world, I haven't been able to see my friend in person for a really long time. So the kind of like motivation to work on it isn't really there because I'm like, I'd like to give it to in person. But with my friend handing it to her, it's sort of, it's a nice compromise and it's not too bad. And so that's why I want to try and finish it. I have another old-ish project. It's from last year, so it's not like super old. And this was sort of out of the blue. I just had a desire to continue working on this. I think it's because I finished the Dancing Nancies. I think I was on the stockinette in the round of the body. I don't think I'd finished it yet. And I was really craving more colour work. And so I was like, oh, I could cast on something new and do some more colour work. And then I was like, okay, Nina, let's just check your whips. I'm sure you have a colour work project on the go. Of course I did. And I finally made some decent progress, though it's hard to see with the tiny cord, on my Sparky. It's called Sparky, right? It's been a while. And I think, yeah, I have a marker in the back. This is where I got up to the last time I showed this. So I started it towards the end of last year. It was one of my Make 9 projects for last year, and it just, I wasn't feeling the colour work. This pattern at the top was a little bit too, it's not really that intricate. It's just longer floats, having to do increases at the same time. It just wasn't enjoyable. But then I suddenly just found my flow and just, got through it, no problem. And split for sleeves already, though I've only done like 2 rows of the body, very little. And I'm now up to this main colourwork pattern, which is the same as the Spice cardigan that I made for a friend of mine a couple of years ago. And so now it's just really easy going, because all it really is 1x1 colourwork every other round. And the yarn I'm using is Vovó by Retrosaria. And I'm probably going to switch the contrast colour soon because I've got 3 different ones I want to use. But I wanted this colour, which I used in the yoke, to also appear a little bit in the body so it doesn't kind of like cut off weirdly. And I'm still trying to figure out if I want to fade in the other colour or if I do want to start contrast. I think once I do one round with the other colour, I'll probably get a sense of, woo, it changes really quickly. Let's try to fade it in. But yeah, so really happy. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. The yarn is incredible. It is quite a like stretchy yarn, which made it sometimes hard to work with for this colour work. But for the easy 1x1, it's amazing. And I really love the colour combination and I can't wait to get to the other colours. And so this was all before Ireland, and then after I came back, I was so focused on finishing and working on other bits that I haven't really touched it. But now that it's hopefully going to cool down at some point, I think this is one of the projects I'd really like to work on this year because it's really, really fun and I'd like to get it done for the colder weather. So also made some progress on that one. And the other old project that I have, which is just from like the beginning of the year, it's not that old, is the Lighthouse Keeper pullover. So I think the last time I showed it, I just split for sleeves. I haven't done a load on it. But I have made a bit of progress on the body. And I'm now at the point where I need to decide, do I finish up the skein on the body and then work the sleeves, or should I work the sleeves first? Because I'm worried I won't have enough yarn. And that was already a problem I had when I cast on. I knew it could be a problem. I have pretty much an entirely new cake for the body. And then I either have 2 or 3 skeins left. And because it's an Aran weight yarn, it could be that I need a full sleeve for each of the, a full skein of yarn for each of the sleeves, which means I wouldn't have enough. So I need to figure out what to do about it, because this is Whistlebear Cheviot Marsh, so it's a UK yarn. Like I said, I'm going to be in the UK, and so if I feel like I'm going to need more, it's better if I order it now to a friend of mine and pick it up when I'm there, and then, you know, while I still have other skeins from the other dye lot, I can then kind of, you know, fade them in. And I had gauge issues, and then I had yoke depth issues. It's all because I'm using a different yarn than what's recommended. You're meant to use a DK with mohair, except for these bits here with the like slipped stitches and pearls and things. You're meant to just use the DK yarn. And I was like, yeah, I'd rather just use the yarn that I have. And yeah, now I might run out of yarn. But I'm going to just have a look, because if I have 3 skeins, I think I could be okay. If I only have 2 more, could be tight. And so if I only have 2 more, I might do 1 sleeve as soon as possible. And then I can place that order to a friend of mine and collect it. Because I think I'd only need like 1 more. But we'll see. I'm sure I'll be fine. So not that much progress on that one, but some. And then I've got 3 new projects. Let's start with this one. This is a test knit. What am I on? Is it my 3rd test knit, 4th test knit for the year? I'm currently not doing very many test knits this year, but this was one I was really interested in. It's for the Making Stories magazine. I own a couple of issues of the magazine and really enjoy it. It's a company based in Germany. It's a relatively small team that does the whole magazine, and I just like the work that they do. And I thought it'd be nice to kind of test knit one of the like bigger sizes. And the sweater is called Circe, and I'll include the one picture I think we have. We're allowed to talk about it. And we got I think a 50% discount on the original yarn. We didn't have to use it, but we had the option to, and that's what I did. And it's Erica Knight Studio Linen, I believe, and I don't have a load to show. So this is, I'm working in the round. You didn't straight away, so you can see this kind of like scoop neck because it was webbed flat for a while. And very, not necessarily complicated, but like tricky sort of increases and things, which have turned out beautifully, but it wasn't always the easiest to follow. It's not that it's written badly, it's literally just because it is a little bit more involved. But you start by just working like a little shoulder seam, and then you split off into actually, you know, doing more raglan style increases. Probably see it better like that. So this will be the sleeve, sort of like the sleeve cap. And so I'm on the yoke, but the way that this raglan is designed is so that you don't have too much like fabric at the bottom of the raglan, because that's what happens quite often with how raglans are just the way you know, knit them. You end up having to get the right, you know, amount of ease. You often just end up having a lot of extra fabric towards the bottom of the raglan. But this one was done so that it fits more snugly at the top. And then instead of continuing to do the increases, which would then give you like a lot of extra fabric, you use horizontal and vertical bust darts to increase stitches where you need them. So you get a more kind of flattering fit. And the reason I wanted to knit this is just because I think the like lace motif on the sleeves and the body is incredible. But we did run into an issue relatively quickly, actually. I kind of calculated everything and realized that I don't need horizontal bust darts, but I do need... No, I need horizontal, but I don't need vertical. I can't remember. One of the ones I need, one of the other ones I don't. And I need the second set of bust darts. But the instructions are written, once you finish the first set of bust darts, this is when you then start the second set. And I kind of messaged and was like, well, if I don't need the first set, how do I know when to start the second set? And how many rows you've knitted is very important. And we just haven't heard back. So I'm stalling because I can't work on it until I get those instructions. So I've done as much as I've dared to do based on kind of calculating, okay, if I did do the first set of bust starts, how many rows would I have to work before I work those? And so then I was like, well, I can definitely work to that point because I know I can't add the other bust starts until the first ones are done. Not that I'm doing them. And that's the point I'm at, and I can't keep going until I get an update on the pattern. And I'm kind of just stalling on it a bit, getting, anxious and worried that I'm not going to get it done. We do have until like the end of October, but my plan was to try and get a lot of it done in August when the testnet started. So that, because I already knew I was going to be in the UK in October, and I was like, oh, October's sort of a write-off for things like this, because I don't want to bring too many projects with me, and I want to bring stuff that, I really want to work on at the time and not stressful potential testnet. So that's all gone wrong, and hopefully I'll get an update soon, and then can continue working on it. But I might have to just contact them and say it's not going to be done on time. It just can't be. When you're given like 2-3 months for a testnet, you kind of assume that even if things go wrong, you're still going to be able to have a little bit of leeway. But a huge chunk of the middle of like the testnet has just been used up waiting for an answer on this. And I know that's fine, that's what has to happen, but then I hope the design and the Making Stories team then are also understanding if I say I'll do as much as I can, but I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm stressed and anxious about a testnet, because it's not like you get paid for it. Yeah, we got the yarn 50% off, but I still had to pay for half of it. And yeah, so we'll see how it goes. I don't want to put pressure on myself with that testnet, but I do want to try and do what I can. And to be honest, I do think most of the feedback they're going to need is for the yoke. So if I can get onto the body, I think that is the biggest thing that I can then give feedback on, say how it fits and everything. And the body and the sleeves should kind of be standard. But yeah. So that's one. Then another one, which is a pair of socks, fingering weight socks that I started for the same friend who's getting the Fjer cardigan and everything else. But these, I'm kind of a bit more chill about these socks. I don't think there's any way I'm going to be able to get them done for when I'm in the UK, because I've got other things like the Fjer cardigan I actually want to finish. But I was just desperate to do some socks again, and I was like, well, I'll cast them on and they can just be a future present. So this pattern is called Tiptoe Through the Tulips, and is a pattern by Stone Knits, I think is her name. It's from a colourwork sock book, and I've made some changes because of course I did. So you're meant to do a short row heel, but like I said earlier, I find a short row heel doesn't really fit, and I'm just not sure how to improve the fit, and I know a heel flap and gusset fits my friend better than a shorter heel. I've made a couple of socks for her already. And so I made the choice to go for a heel flap and gusset, but the tulip pattern is meant to continue on the like foot of the sock, so both the top and the bottom, which I then can't easily do because of the gusset like decreases. So I was like, okay, well, I could try and make it work anyway. I'll have extra stitches, but I just won't put in extra tulips. There'll just be a gap that then starts to disappear. But then I also thought, is it actually comfortable to walk on like colour work because it's thicker in places? And then I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to do them just at the top. I think that's cute enough. I don't think it needs to be everywhere. And the reason I chose this is because her, like, on her mother's side of the family, they're all Dutch. And so she, you know, has some connection to the Netherlands. And I was like, tulips! Cliche, I know, but I think she'll really like them. And I did think that for the second sock, I might use different colours for the tulips. So yarn-wise, the main coloured yarn that I'm using is from the Fiber Fox in the Merino sock, just the standard one. The colour is mint. It's a really old colourway. And I have actually started the cuff of the second sock because it's twist rib. And I was like, if I get it done straight away, then I just have all the fun stuff to do later. And the green that I'm using for like the stems and leaves is an Avetta classic yarn. I think this is Juicy Green because it's the same one that I used for my Love Magic dress, or whatever that's called, color 279. And I'm just using some minis for the tulips. So I've already used this color, which is also by the Fiber Fox. It's from the Arabian Nights like mini set. And then this one, which I don't know. I don't know where this one's from, but it's pretty. It's a tulip color. And then I have 3 other colors in here where I'm just not sure what to use. I really want to use the blue. And then I was like, red, it pops, does it not? And orange, I don't know. So I'm currently still working on the heel flap, and I want to get to the decreases and join it in the round again because I'm using mini circulars for this. And once I'm at that point, then I'll probably start the colour work for the second one. I'm trying to do sort of not 2 at a time, but do a section of one, do a section of another one, and that makes it easier to then actually finish both of them. Instead of having one and then the other one languishes for ages. So a pair of colourwork socks on the go, because I've wanted to make something from the book since I got the book, and I just kept putting it off. So finally did it. And then the last new project I have to share is once again along the same lines of like using, obviously stash yarn is a big thing for me this year, and using scraps and things, but I also realised I have so many mini skeins. You know, when was it, during the pandemic, you know, every couple of months, either every month for some clubs that I signed up to, or every other month, you know, someone would release a mini skein set, and I'd be like, it's just a mini skein set, it's not that much yarn. And then with advent calendars, it adds up. And so I'm using a couple of mini skeins for those socks, but I then also went through and was like, either I need to make a blanket. Yeah, I kind of found a pattern from Andrea Mowry called the Embrace Cowl, where she used, I think it's 12 different colours from an advent from someone else, and faded through them. So you hold the yarn double, and you always kind of like switch out one colour, then switch out that colour. I'll show you. This is how much I have so far. So I started with 2 strands of the same colour, then I dropped 1 strand and picked up a new colour, then I dropped the second strand of the original colour and just worked with 2 of colour B, and then I did 1 of B, 1 of C, both of C, and you just kind of keep going, fading it through like that. And then you repeat the same thing again, but in the other order, and then you seam it together and boom bam, you've got a nice cowl that uses up minis. So like I said, in the original pattern she uses a advent calendar, so the fade is already there. Now I do have some advent calendars I haven't used which are a fade, but they're 24 colors and I didn't really want to split them in half. So I was like, you have plenty of mini skeins, you're fine. And I just kind of, it's not a perfect fade, but I, started with blues and now we're moving more into greens, and here are some of, or all of the other colors that I'm going to be using. So heavily moving into the green now. It's just at the beginning that I had a bit of blue. And yeah, going a little bit lighter with this one, for example. And yeah, so just using up my minis in a different way and getting out something that I think I'll get a lot of wear out of because it's very soft. I think they're all superwash merino, some with nylon, some without, all fingering weight yarn. And the good thing is you don't have to weave your ends in because you sew the two bits together. So I've just been putting in knots and I'm sure that will be fine. You can always push the ends back in if they start to pop out. And it's been really fun to knit because so it's worked in the round, and because you can see that there's these purl bumps, you do have to purl every other round, but because it's only a couple of stitches and then you have the slip stitch detail, it's just really fun. And you do a certain number of repeats with the yarn, and then you drop one, and so the colors are changing and it just goes by quite quickly. So I did most of this in an evening or two, and then kind of had to slow down and work on other things. But I made I think I made a decent amount of progress in just 2 evenings. I do think it was 2. And yeah, I'm excited to keep going. And then it's just something else, I think, to make either more in the future, either using an actual fade or continuing to fade my minis, scraps even, and I think it could also make a nice present. So I really like blues and greens, so I'm quite happy that I managed to get a fade that will sort of roughly work. And the technique you're using with the switching out the yarn also helps with the fade, so do the purl bumps. And yeah, really enjoying that one. Whew. That's everything. I've got other projects I've been working on. I've got more new projects, but like I said, I'm trying to catch up here. And time just keeps going by and I keep starting new things. I'm just so excited for autumn. So there's been a lot of new cast-ons, and there will be more. Lots of knitting. And I've got lots of beautiful yarn to show that I got in Ireland. I'm really excited. Haven't started knitting with any of it, but I hope to soon. And yeah, so I've got a few things that I want to try and finish before we hit October. Well, not before we hit October, before I'm in the UK in the middle of October. And fingers crossed it all works out. But yes, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!